Greetings and welcome to the Man Cave Meals podcast. This podcast will take you on a journey into the world of barbecue, grilling, and outdoor cooking. Here at the Man Cave, fire is my favorite source of heat and smoke is my seasoning of choice. If I can't cook it outside on my Man Cave party deck, I'm probably not interested in cooking it at all. Join me weekly as we have conversations about different ideas on outdoor cooking. We might talk about a recipe, a cooking method, specific cuts of meat, or the equipment used to manage those cooks. The possibilities are endless. The video version of this podcast streams live every Thursday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time from the Man Cave Meals Facebook page and YouTube channel. Follow me on one or both of those locations to get alerts on the live stream as well as other content that I publish each week. And now, let's get to this week's episode. Good evening. Happy Thursday, everyone. It's that time of week once again. Welcome back to the Man Cave. Jeff, how's life in sunny Florida?
Hot.
It's hot. Okay, well, it is that time of week once again. Have you had a good cooking week this week?
Nope.
No?
Nope.
I don't believe it.
Nope. I've been sick, buddy. Today's the first cook that I've had.
Yeah, well, that rack of pork looked pretty good, though.
Oh, it was awesome, but
yeah, I hate that you've been under the weather. You've had that mess for about a week now.
Can't seem to shake it.
Oh man, I had a good day cooking today. I cooked a skillet cookie in the pellet smoker, and I cooked a grilled on the griddle. I got the griddle out at lunchtime. I fired up the griddle outside and made a grilled pulled pork sandwich with cheese and barbecue sauce. And it was pretty good. It needs a little tweak here and there maybe, but other than that, it was a good day. It's been beautiful weather here this week. So we got some of our regulars checking in with us tonight. We've got Hank and Smoking Tar Heel, Anthony, Russ, Sam. Tanya's not with me tonight. I don't know what Tanya's up to. She's not logged on with us here yet. I'm not sure if she's coming or not. Tanya's my wife, for those of you who don't know, and she's kind of running the show in the background upstairs usually, but she's not with us this evening.
North Carolina's not playing, are they?
No, basketball season's over. So, well, we'll go ahead and roll things off here. One of the things, what we wanted to talk about this week was grilling accessories. And what I did is I got with Jeff earlier this week and said, let's do a podcast on grilling accessories and talk about the things that are really nice to have to make life easy for you and make the grilling, smoking, and outdoor cooking experience more enjoyable. So I made a list of the 8 things that I think are the top things, and I asked Jeff to do the same thing. And Jeff, do you have your list with you?
Yep.
Okay, good, because I didn't print your list off. And my phone's talking to me for some reason or another. So these things are not requirements. Some of them are basic requirements, but most of them are niceties. Most of them are things that you want as you grow in the smoking and grilling hobby. So at the top of my list, I went ahead and put something that probably doesn't match what Jeff has at the top of his. I just put a broad category instead of a specific item, and I just put grill utensils. And when I say grill utensils, what that covers is your tongs, your spatulas, your burger presses, what else did we talk about, Jeff? Basting brushes, squirt bottles, the tools. Yeah, the tools you use when you're standing in front of the grill. Those are the utensils. Do you have that at number 1, Jeff?
No, I had that down, started at number 3.
Okay, so my number 1's the grill utensils, and this is a place where you can either spend a lot of money or not spend a lot of money. But one of the philosophies I try to take when it comes to buying this sort of stuff is, since grilling and outdoor cooking for me is more than just a hobby, it's a passion. It's something that I enjoy. It's where I find my solitude. It's my happy place when I'm outdoor cooking. Jeff, you know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
So, and because of that, I tend to spend more money than absolutely necessary on some things. There are some places where I'll buy something cheap if it's something that I don't care much about. But a lot of the tools I have, I care about them for specific reasons, and sometimes it'll be a expensive tool, and sometimes it won't. And we'll talk about some of those as we go. But those tools are those are that really the inexpensive things. Even if you buy uh, nicer grill utensils, you're still not going to spend a fortune on any of that stuff. In my opinion, all of that stuff can be had. All of those items that, for me, that fall into the grill utensils category, can be had for less than $100 combined. Would that sound pretty
Yeah,
reasonable to you, Jeff?
that
If
sounds
you've
reasonable.
spent if you've spent more than $100 on that stuff, you've bought some nice stuff. Uh,
Mhm.
but there are certain things, and you'll also buy something that you think looks good, and you'll play with it for a while, and you don't fall in love with it, and you'll buy something else. That
Yep.
you'll collect. I've probably got 10 different tongs around here, and I've only got one that I love, and that's the one that I grab every time I go to the grill anymore. And it was a Walmart buy. It's a Farberware brand that's got stainless steel handles, and it's got these rubberized silicone grabbers out at the end. For some reason or another, I like those, and those are the ones I go for. So all that stuff falls in the $100 range for me. Jeff, you had that one at number 3, right?
Yep.
So utensils. I'm going to make a list here. So what are the utensils that you consider part of that, or have we covered them all?
You got them all. I mean, it's the spatula, the tongs, the burger press,
Mhm.
spritz bottle, squirt bottle, silicone brushes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much
Uh,
everything you need to.
it's the basic stuff you see on
Yep.
the shelf in the grill section when you go to Lowe's, Home Depot, or Walmart.
Yep.
It's that stuff. And there's a lot of stuff there. There's racks for holding taco shells. There's,
Racks
just
for corn.
there's any of that stuff on that wall at the big box store falls into this category. So what did you have at number 1, Jeff?
Number one I had is an instant read thermometer.
Okay. So instant read thermometer, Jeff has for number 1. I put thermometers in a category as well, and that's my number 2, is thermometers. And because I wanted to talk about more than just the instant read, the instant read thermometer is the tool that everybody's got to have. And we talked a little bit about those when we had our episode on getting in on the cheap. I talked about some inexpensive instant read thermometers, but that's another area where you can spend anywhere between uh, $8.99 and $110. I don't know. Jeff, do you know of any instant read thermometers that cost more than the Thermapen one?
Not off the top of my head. There may be one out there, but
Uh, the Fireboard Spark costs more than that.
yes, it does.
Uh, but that's a different animal. I don't want to really bring that into the loop. That one's what, 159 or
Yeah, I was
169?
going to say I wouldn't consider that to be a pure instant read thermometer because it has
Yeah,
other
it's an
functions.
instant read thermometer that does a lot of other things. So, but so we're talking about $8 to $10 on the low end and $110 on the high end. You can get an instant read thermometer, but that's a tool you've got to have if you want to be a serious barbecue or grill cook. that is the tool you need to know when your proteins are ready. And there are some proteins you can cook by watching them. Fish and chicken breasts fall into that category for me. I can for the most part, I can always look at fish. You can watch fish change its opacity from the outer edge and you're good. But I still like to use my instant read thermometer because there's very few fish out there that I want to take over 140, and I want to make sure they come off before they get there and let them coast on up to 140. Chicken's the same way. I'll still put a thermometer in the chicken and the steaks, and then you get down to things like the barbecue meats, like the pork butts, the briskets, and the ribs. I don't really use a thermometer for temperature on those. Temperature is only a reference point to, you're looking for a different end game with the big barbecue meats than a specific temperature. But in most cases, that temperature is north of 200 degrees Fahrenheit when those guys are ready. But the instant read thermometer is a tool everybody needs. And like I said, there's a lot. What's your favorite one, Jeff? I know you've probably got several. Which one? What's the
I
one
like
you
my
grab?
Javelin.
The Javelin? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that Javelin Pro. I mean,
that's a nice
solid
thermometer. And the Javelin Pro, I've got one of those also. The Javelin Pro is in the mid range. It's $50, unless it's gone up since I bought mine.
Nope, still
It's
sitting
a
there.
50. Yeah, it's a $50 thermometer, and speed wise, it's comparable to the Thermopin. It's when I say within a half a second, that's not saying a whole lot, because a lot of these people are nitpicking tenths of a second when you get down to read temperatures on some of these thermometers. But Jeff likes the Javelin. That's a good thermometer. I've got two Thermopins here. I've got a Thermopin 1, and then I've got my original Thermopin that I bought a really long time ago. And oddly enough, and I don't want to cast a shadow on ThermoWorks, because the Thermopin 1 is what I would call the what's the word I'm looking for? It's the gold standard in this market space. Would you agree with that, Jeff?
Yeah.
It's the one by which all others are judged. Would you say?
Yeah, I'd agree with that statement.
Yeah. So I've got one. I like to I buy more of this stuff because as a person who is passing along information on social media, I feel like I need to have had hands-on experience with a lot of these. So I've bought way more than I need. I probably have 15 instant read thermometers here, and the Thermopin 1 being the most expensive one. But I've got a $25 one that I like a lot. That's just as fast as the Thermopin 1, and it's a quarter of the price. It's the ThermoPro TP19. I really am a big fan of that thermometer. I've got several ThermoPros. I've bought several of them, and at one point I was affiliated with ThermoPro, and they gave me, I can't remember if they gave me one or two. I think I only got one for free from them. But they're less expensive, and it's one of these things that I think everybody should have, because I know your grandmother could tell that something was ready just by looking at it, but I can tell you from experience that you're going to be hit and miss if you're playing that game, and you will be consistent if you learn to read the temperatures and learn to get the meat off before it's overcooked, because there's nothing worse than overcooked. Undercooked. Undercooked could actually be worse than overcooked. But if you've got a thermometer, you'll know.
Only if it's chicken.
Yeah. Well, yeah, chicken. You're taking a bite of chicken that's still red in the middle has a psychological impact on most people, that it doesn't matter if it's going to make you physically sick. It's going to make you emotionally sick if you take a bite of some raw chicken. So, but yeah, knowing when that's good, and using a thermometer regularly makes you a better cook also, because then using a thermometer throughout a cook on something like a chicken breast, you'll learn when that chicken breast needs to come off. Let's just say, for instance, that you're going to cook to the USDA standard on a chicken breast and cook it to 165 degrees, which is where Uncle Sam says that it needs to go to make it safe to eat. So I'm not going to argue with Uncle Sam's philosophy at the moment, but the thing is, that that needs to be your finishing temperature. That's not the temperature that you want to take it off the grill, because if you've still got it on the heat, when it gets to 165, it's going to go up to 175 or 180 by the time you get it off the grill. And if you like chewing on leather, that's what you're going to end up with. And maybe at some point we'll do a podcast, Jeff, and we'll talk about pasteurization temperatures, because that's something that it's a geek thing. It's a numbers thing. And
it's for us mediators.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about it sometime, because I can explain away why you don't need to take chicken to 165 degrees. And when you don't, the chicken's a lot better, and it's a lot juicier, a lot more flavorful. So we'll play with that. But so thermometers are high on both of our lists. They were number 2 on my list and number 1 on Jeff's list. So, Jeff, what's number 2 on your list?
1,200 degree gloves, or high temperature gloves.
Okay, gloves. Those are on my list also, but they're on down the list. High temperature gloves. And Jeff, why do we need high temperature gloves?
To keep from burning our thinners. Of course, mine are burnt so bad I don't use gloves that often, but when I do, I need them.
The gloves that Jeff and I are talking about here aren't gloves that you use to handle food with.
No.
They're gloves that you use to handle hot grill parts and hot smokers. Jeff and I spend a lot of time cooking on Kamado grills where everything inside the grill is hot. Even when you're doing low and slow cooking at 250 degrees, the components in that grill are too hot to pick up. A 250 degree grill grate will seriously burn you in a very short time. So these gloves, you can get them on Amazon. I should have brought one here to show on camera, but I've got 4 or 5 pairs of these laying around. They don't last forever, but they're inexpensive. If you go onto Amazon and search for high temperature grill gloves, you'll find these things, and they're grills that come up a few inches above your wrist, and they're made out of this Kevlar-like material, and they're 5-finger. They give you good dexterity where you can hold on to things, and you can pick up very hot grill parts. I can pick up heat deflectors that are 400 degrees or hotter and have time to move them off and set them somewhere safe before they heat through and burn my hands. A lot of those high temperature grill gloves are rated to north of 1,400 degrees Fahrenheit, but that's for a short time. You can't hold something that hot forever with those things, but you can hold it long enough to move it out of your way. And I have several pairs of those, and I also use those for moving pans around on my grill. What are some of the specific things you use these for, Jeff?
I use it when I'm doing my wok cooking out on the Kamado, because you got that fire coming up on
right.
It will take some hair off.
Wok cooking on a Kamado's, it's hot around the edges.
Oh, yeah.
Very hot. And if you're cooking on a rotisserie, you want a pair of those gloves to grab that spit when it's time to take the meat off, because that spit will burn the crap out of you too. It's very hot. You could use a towel in each hand, but these gloves just make it easy. And these gloves,
so much easier.
They get dirty, but you can throw them in the washing machine and just let them air dry, and they're fine. I probably go through 1 to 2 pairs of those a year.
Yep.
They don't last. They will not last forever. They're not a lifetime purchase, but they're cheap. You should be able to get a pair of those on any given day for less than $20 on Amazon. And there's a lot to choose from. And it's one of those things that you're just going to have to play with, and I really recommend it. But then again, you might, if all the cooking you're doing is like on a gas grill, you may not have a situation where you need those. But we'll talk about one other aspect why you might need those down the line here a little bit.
Don't buy welder's gloves.
Welder's gloves, right? That's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. A lot of people will recommend to you to buy welder's gloves, and I've tried it. I bought some to try it to see, and these welder's gloves don't hold a candle to these high temperature Kevlar grill gloves. A welder's glove's not designed to let you pick up something that's hot. No. It's designed to keep hot sparks that are flying from your welding from burning you. Yep. And they are not at all designed for holding hot items. So I'm not really sure where that came from, but I see it recommended.
You got some people out there who swear by them.
Yeah. Me. There's a lot of people in the barbecue forums that when you ask this question about gloves, they all seem to want to recommend and the way I figure that's what they've got, and they've never tried these ones that Jeff and I are talking about here, because the first time I tried a pair of these, there was no going back to anything else.
Or John, or it's a case of, gee, let's see if we can get this fool to buy this.
Yeah, but welder's gloves cost a lot more than welder's gloves. I'm not
expensive.
Yeah, they're not as cheap as these Kevlar style gloves. So that covers 1, 2. We've got 1, 2, and 3 on your list.
Nope, just 1 and 2 so far.
Okay, wait a minute. You had utensils as number 3.
Yeah.
So we talked about utensils because it was number 1 on my list. And we've got 1, 2, and 3 on your list. We've got 1, 2, and 7 on my list because the high heat gloves are number 7 on my list. So let me go back to number 3. Let's go to number 3 on my list now. I believe everybody needs at least one good quality 8-inch chef's knife and a method of sharpening it. The method of sharpening it is optional if you've got a service near you that can help you put a good edge on the knife as it needs sharpening. The chef's knife is one of the most commonly used items. A lot of people don't look at it and consider it to be a grilling accessory, but it's involved in just about everything I do on the grill. I'm prepping something, and the 8-inch chef's knife is the workhorse in my block. It's I've got a few different ones. I've got a favorite one, of course, and Jeff has the same one. And a chef's knife is something that becomes personal. Hang on a second. I've got to get a cat out of here. I need to pause for a minute. Tanya, will you shut the door and keep Lily out of here, please? Thanks. Sorry about that, guys. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't have any knives down on my list, and the reason why is because I consider it to be a kitchen item, not exclusive to barbecue.
Right. It might not be, but it's one of the things that I think in my grilling, it's something that I always use.
Oh, definitely. I totally agree with you. I'm just saying it's not, I just didn't consider it to be exclusively barbecue. You know,
right.
Most people have. And if you're doing any cooking at all, you got a good chef's knife.
A lot of the things some of the things that are on my list are definitely not exclusive to barbecue, but they're things that are highly used in barbecue. A chef's knife on the low end of what I would recommend, I think is $40 to $45 for the Victorinox.
Mm-hmm.
I've got one of those. It's a pretty good quality knife. It's $40 or $45. And the next step up, I believe, from that, you'll be looking at Henckels or Wusthof.
Right.
And those are in the $125 range, if I'm not mistaken, 125 to 140. And honestly, I don't think there's a lot of advantage. knives, like I said, are quite personal. You need to figure out what knife. The knife needs to feel good in your hand, and
Number one item, make it feel good in your
right.
hand.
The one that you're using the most, which is going to be that chef's knife. It needs to feel like an extension of your hand, and it took me an awful long time to find that knife, and I found it about 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, and I bought one.
And one of the big things with the chef's knife, French knife, is you want to make sure the handle is good, that you're not wrapping your knuckles on the cutting board every time you're taking a downstroke, because some of them don't have a big tang on them. That's
right. Well, some people also like the European style, and some like the Asian style.
Mm-hmm.
The blade geometry is very different on those two knives, but it's a preference thing. If you like the look of the Asian knives, and look is one of the things that sells more knives than anything else. Everybody falls in love with the Damascus steel blades. What we're talking about, Jeff.
Yep.
It's like the Shuns, the Miyabi. Miyabi's kind of a weird one. Miyabi's actually a European-made knife to Asian specs, but there's a lot of good ones out there. But pick the knife you like and hold it in your hand and get used to using it. And sometimes when it comes to sharpening, if you live in an area, some Ace Hardwares have a nice sharpening service.
Yeah, most of them do now.
That machine that they use is incredible. It does a fantastic job. I want to find out if my local Ace has it, and if they do, I'm going to take a knife over there and let them do it just so I can see how well it does. But everything I've seen and read about it, it does a friggin' fantastic job.
It did, John. I took that 8-inch Wusthof over there that my son put a ding in the blade.
Yeah.
And it was more of a ding than I was going to be able to get out, on a stone. I took it over there, and the first thing that machine does is it analyzes the blade.
Right.
And then it takes the sharpness off the blade, and then it puts it back on the blade, then it reanalyzes the blade. And
right.
I tell you what, that thing came out just super nice.
What did they charge you? I don't know what that cost.
$6.
$6? You can't beat that.
No.
No, if I had access to that, I might not have bought some of the sharpening equipment I have, but I need to find out if my local Ace has it, and if they don't, I'll find out which my closest Ace that does, and I want to try it. I want to take a knife. I might take my Henkels out there and let them put an edge on it, or possibly with that particular machine, Jeff, I would not hesitate to put the Kramer on it. As nice as that machine works.
Yeah. That Kramer is a nice blade. It's going to be a long time before you're going to have to do anything with that Kramer. I mean,
right.
That thing.
I haven't sharpened it yet because I hit it every time.
Hit it with steel and you're good to go.
Steel, and I have not had to sharpen that blade yet, which is amazing. It's
but see, that's what it comes down to. A lot of people say, "Well, gee, I don't want carbon steel because it rusts. If you take care of it, it doesn't rust." The advantage to carbon steel is it will dull quicker, but it sharpens quicker. You don't have to put it on the stone every time. Throw it on the steel, and you're back up and running. So, when you get into the Shuns and whatnot,
right?
They'll take the steel, but they're gonna need a little bit more.
Yeah, but I do believe that the chef's knife's high on my list of things that you need. You need to have one that you like. So that holds the number 3 spot on my list. So let me go ahead and drop down to number 4 on my list, Jeff, and then we'll have a look at your number 4, because I know my number 4 is probably another one that's definitely not exclusive to grilling, but next to my instant read thermometer and next to my 8-inch chef's knife, this is the most frequently used accessory in my kitchen and my cooking. You want to take a guess at what it is?
No.
It's my vacuum sealer.
Ooh.
My vacuum sealer.
No, that's not even something I thought about for, I totally agree.
Let me tell you why I think it's important to have a vacuum sealer. And Jeff and I both have chamber sealers, which are on the upper end of the vacuum sealer hierarchy. But you can get a a food saver, vacuum sealer. I think their basic is their basic model less than $100. They're
It's
very
99. You
basic.
can get it at 99 at Costco, but
Okay.
caveat is if you're using it a lot, you're going to be replacing it.
Well,
they don't hold up.
But I think it's important to have a vacuum sealer, and there are multiple reasons I think it's important to have a vacuum sealer. Number one, it gives me the ability to buy meats in bulk, and I can parcel them out and put them in vacuum seal bags and keep them in the freezer for extended periods of time if I need to. I don't have a problem putting the steak in the freezer and letting it be there for 6 or 8 months or a year. Not if it's in a vacuum seal bag. The other thing that I do extensively with vacuum seal bags is I put leftovers in it. When I cook a pork butt, I'm the only one here that eats pork butts. So, and I give some of it away, but I put individual servings in vacuum seal bags and throw them in the freezer. And that allows me to not waste any meat. I don't have to throw anything away. It keeps, I can't tell you how long it keeps, because when I put pulled pork or ribs or brisket or whatever in my freezer, it's never going to be in there, in my case, for more than 2 months or 3. Yeah. Because if I've got it in there, if I know it's in there, I'll eat it. I'll make sure that it gets eaten. And but I think that's a high priority item. It allows you to save money. The vacuum sealer, in my opinion, it doesn't really matter which vacuum sealer system you buy. I think it pays for itself in the money you're going to save by being able to buy in bulk and by having less waste at the end of the day. Thoughts on that, Jeff?
Totally agree. A funny story about the chamber vac. I bought a big Costco. They had a big bag of Parmesan, grated Parmesan, and it was not the type that they put the dust on, to keep it from clumping back together.
Right.
So I got the great idea. I'm going to vacuum seal this stuff into 4 bags, right? I vacuum sealed it. Now Kathy has to grate it.
Yeah. But that's another thing. Cheese is another thing that I use the vacuum sealer for all the time. Like, for instance, I'll buy one of those triangular blocks of Parm or Pecorino Romano that's maybe 8 ounces. And 8 ounces of Parm, guys, goes a long way. So every time, what I do is I'll start out, Jeff, with an 8x10 chamber seal bag. When I cut one of those open and grate some off, I'll put it in a chamber seal bag, seal it, throw it back in my refrigerator, and the next time I get it out, I trim the top off the bag,
reuse it,
take my cheese out, grate off what I need, put it back in there, and seal that same bag again, where I don't even have to use a different bag. But cheese, anytime, I don't buy grated cheese. I always grate my own cheese, so I'm always working from a block. And if I don't grate the entire block, it goes into a vacuum seal bag. If I have leftover grated cheese, it goes into a Ziploc. I don't vacuum seal grated cheese. I
won't anymore.
Usually because there's not that much of it. And
well, this was like 4 pounds.
Yeah.
Do you know how long 4 pounds of grated Parm's going to last?
Yeah. That's a lot.
But it was a good buy.
I think a vacuum sealer is something that falls into my really right stuff category, not just for grilling and smoking, but for everything that goes on in your kitchen. Its uses extend well beyond grilling. If you want to buy a 20-pound bag of rice or a 20-pound bag of flour, your vacuum sealers, where you're going to parcel that out and put it away, and it's going to stay good because it's not going to have oxygen and humidity to make it go bad. It extends the life of everything you put in there.
A vacuum sealer over time will pay for itself.
Yeah. So that's part of my grilling and smoking, because it's something I use almost every time I cook. So what hit the number 4 slot on your list?
It's not going to be yours, I can guarantee you that.
What?
Number 4 spot on my list is a griddle.
A griddle.
Griddle.
Okay, hang on a second. That's not that kind of is on my list, and we'll get to it in a minute. So a griddle, like okay, so you've got the Kamado Joe carbon steel griddle for that grill,
right?
Okay, what if you got? You've got a griddle add-on for the Masterbuilt grill, also, correct?
It came with it. Yep.
And those are the two griddles that you're working with, right?
Yep.
So, guys,
I use the Kamado one more than I use the
right
Masterbuilt one.
If you don't have a Masterbuilt or don't have a Kamado, if you've got a gas grill, Lodge Cast Iron makes a griddle that's maybe 15 or 16 inches left to right and maybe 10 or 12 inches front to back that you can set on your gas grill and do basic griddling tasks. You put it on the grill and turn the burners underneath it on full blast, and you'll have a nice little griddle surface there for searing.
That Lodge griddle fits perfect on the front to back on the Masterbuilt, by the way.
Okay, so a griddle. Jeff likes a griddle. I don't disagree with the griddle, but I have on my list in the number 6 slot a similar item. I have what I called iron pans and grill safe dishes.
Mm-hmm.
So I do a lot of cooking on grills in cast iron pans. Mm-hmm. I'll throw a pan on a grill where I can do some searing or some flambe, or whatever.
I probably should have lumped all that together: my wok, my griddle, my paella pan,
right?
My cast irons. I probably should have.
Yeah, they kind of go together. So I've got the some of the dishes that I use on my grill. I've got, like I said, a lot of it's cast iron. Cast iron skillets, 8, 10, and 12-inch skillets. At least I've got multiples of each of those for various different things. I've got a couple of odd pans. I've got a Lodge cast iron 9x13 baking dish that I use a good bit. I've got Lodge loaf pans, the 4.5 by 8.5-inch loaf pans, because those are good for more than bread. Those loaf pans are great for lasagna or macaroni and cheese. There's a lot of different things. Meatloaf, yeah. There's a lot of pans that you want cookware that you can put on your grill that you don't have to worry about smoke and discoloration problems. I've got some stoneware. I've got some enameled stoneware that's Lodge brand. I've got some that's Le Creuset. I've got enameled cast iron is also good. It's nice to have at least 1 or 2 Dutch ovens. A 4-quart to 5-quart.
I'll put your Le Creuset set up against my Le Creuset set.
No, I should buy stock in Le Creuset because Jeff keeps them in business. Le Creuset is out of my league. Jeff's wife likes it, I know, but it's Le Creuset. Cast iron is one of the places where I personally don't feel the need to spend more than the basic level. I've had some cast iron, and I've got some cast iron that is more expensive and pricier, but I can't really say that any of that is offering me any advantage. It's not giving me any advantage in terms of cooking. The thing about it is the stuff that I have, the reason I bought it's because it looks nice on camera. And when you're doing social media, that's a plus because it generates activity, it generates comments and questions. But here in the last bit, I've been cooking mostly in my Lodge cast iron, and I like it. I've got, it's very utility. All of it's very reasonably priced. And the things that I use most frequently on the grill, like I said, are my 8, 10, and 12-inch skillets, those loaf pans, that 9x13 baking dish. I've got a couple of smaller, Jeff, those little oval serving dishes that I have. Yeah. Those are kind of nice for individual sized servings of like a single serving macaroni and cheese or a single serving crustless pizza, or
that's what we
a
use it
single
for.
serving, small pan pizza that you can do in that. A cast iron skillet's a perfect tool for cooking a small pan pizza in a grill. It's just one of those really right tools. And once again, guys, cooking with those on the grill is another reason you need those high heat gloves, because you don't want to touch cast iron. Radiates heat. When you grab that cast iron, even with a glove on, you need to know where you're going with it and get there quickly because it is hot and it will come through. So the high heat gloves, once again, kind of on my list, Jeff, the high heat gloves were down at number 7. I had them right after my cast iron pans and baking dishes because I was kind of following the need. I was using those.
If you get this, then you need that.
Yeah, I was using those more as a support item for the hot pans more so than the hot grill parts. So actually I've skipped one on my list. You were talking about the griddle in number 4, which corresponded with my number 6. So where are you at number 5?
Well, as I said, I really should have grouped these together. 4 was the wok, 4 is the griddle, 5 is the wok, 6 is the paella pan. I probably should have grouped all those together with the cast irons and whatnot. Same way you did it.
Yeah.
So my next item would be a pizza stone.
Pizza stone. Okay. Yeah. Is that your number 7?
That'd be my number 6.
Okay, number 6. Pizza stone. Absolutely. Most grills are excellent pizza ovens. Most.
Of course, you probably should add that 3 nuts as well.
Added what?
3 nuts.
Well, for spacers. Well, that's assuming you're working on a Kamado. So
yeah, true.
I can't assume that everybody's using a Kamado, but a pizza stone, there's a learning curve to getting a pizza stone to behave the way you want it on a grill, because you've got to temper the heat that's coming underneath it, because the pizza stone will get so hot that it'll scorch the bottom of your pizza before the toppings are cooked. There is a learning curve to cooking pizzas on the grill, and maybe that can be a podcast subject down the line. Maybe we can talk about that. So my next item that follows my vacuum sealer, Jeff, is a sous vide circulator. And a sous vide circulator is not something that's directly related to using the grill, but it is directly related to my chamber sealer, to my vacuum sealer. What a sous vide circulator is, if you're not familiar with it, it's a device that clamps onto the side of a stock pot or another plastic container that heats and circulates water in the container to a certain temperature, a very precise temperature. And the main thing I use mine for is reheating those leftovers that I've put in vacuum seal bags in my freezer. In fact, today for lunch, I heated up some frozen pulled pork and made a grilled pulled pork sandwich. And I've got a 8-quart stock pot with my sous vide circulator sitting on it. And I heated that water up to 165 degrees, tossed my bag in there, and in about 30 minutes or so, or 30 or 40 minutes, my pulled pork is perfectly reheated, and it's not overcooked. It's not tough and chewy and dry. It's tender, and it's almost as good as it was when it went in the bag. Thoughts, Jeff?
I use a pot of boiling water.
You can do that, yeah. If you don't want to have a sous vide circulator, you can do that. You can but you can do that. That works pretty well with barbecue. Have you ever tried reheating something like chicken or lean pork and simmering water? You can do it. You just have to pay attention to what's going on with it, because the sous vide circulator allows you to reheat something without cooking it any further than it was cooked to begin with. Yep. So for me, that's something that's really nice to have, and it also gives you some options for cooking steaks. A lot of people, steaks are one of the most popular things that grilling enthusiasts use sous vide for. They'll take a raw steak, they'll season it, they may or may not season it first, but they'll put it in a vacuum seal bag and put it in a sous vide bath. And let's say you like your steak at medium rare, which is 130 to 135 degrees internal meat temperature. So if I had a nice thick steak, let's say in my world, a good steak's 1.5 inches thick. In my world, I know everybody doesn't always buy that big, but let's say 1.25 inches just for safety's sake. I would put that in my sous vide bath at 120 to 125 degrees, and I would leave it in there for about an hour. If it's not frozen, I'll leave it in there for an hour to an hour and a half, and that very evenly cooks that steak throughout to that temperature. And when that part of the cook's complete, I'll put it on a grill or on a griddle and sear both sides of that steak to perfection. I'll put a sear on it that I like, and I'll usually use a fat like ghee. Ghee or clarified butter is my favorite fat for doing that. And the additional heat that's provided during that short sear on both sides brings that steak on up to finish at the medium rare temperature that you're looking for. So it's a nice tool if you want to learn something different, or if you want to have that kind of precision cooking ability where you do that. I don't like to recommend sous vide for steaks because, I don't know, I want to talk about it because it's a cool concept. It's not my favorite because the one thing sous vide does not do is provide any flavor benefit. That process does not provide any flavor benefit to your meat. It's not caramelizing anything. There's no Maillard reaction going on. There's no smoke. There's no fire. There's no fat dripping into the fire, creating a residue that comes back and gets on the steak and gives you this flavor that you don't get anywhere else. So I'm not recommending it. I'm just discussing it so you'll know that that's an option. There is a huge fan base of sous vide cooking. Jeff and I have quite a few friends that swear by sous vide. They do a lot of sous vide cooking.
Big in sous vide.
Yeah, and there's a lot of options there. There's a lot of capabilities. So I wanted to bring that up simply because the sous vide circulator gets used frequently here in the man cave, but in my use, it's mostly for reheating vacuum sealed leftovers without overcooking them in the process of reheating. Throwing stuff in the microwave or the oven tends to overcook it, and that's why it's not as good. The sous vide reheat process gives you the best possible method, in my opinion, for reheating. Anything else sous vide's great for, Jeff?
I don't use it.
No, Jeff doesn't do sous vide. That's okay. It's not for everybody. It's not, and I know everybody.
When I was coming up as a chef, nobody used sous vide. Now sous vide is used, quite a bit in fine dining and whatnot. I'm just not a fan of it.
Okay.
Reheating, that would be the only benefit that I would use sous vide for.
What's the next item on your list?
Next item on my list is a infrared thermometer because that came after my pizza stone.
Okay, so, infrared.
I think that's very important. If you're going to be cooking a pizza, you want to make sure that your stone is the correct temperature per your dough that you're using.
So explain to everybody who might not know how that works.
Well, you want to make sure that if you buy a store-bought pizza, we'll just say you're going to use a store-bought pizza, you're going to throw that on the grill. Store-bought pizza says bake it at 450 degrees. You want to make sure your stone is at 450 degrees and not 700 degrees. Otherwise, you're going to have a black bottom and nothing on the top.
Yep. Store-bought pizzas and store-bought pizza dough tend to have sugar in them, which does not like high temperature.
No.
Anytime you buy a pizza at the store, the grocery store, or a pizza dough at the grocery store, it's important that you follow the instructions that came with it. And Jeff and I come from a world of Kamado grill owners, and that we think a lot in terms of Kamado cooking because that's what we do. But there's a big misunderstanding with a lot of Kamado owners when it comes to pizza. And that misunderstanding is that cooking it at a higher temperature gives you a better result. And it's just not the case.
Nope.
It's very easy to ruin a pizza by cooking too hot. Now, if you make your own dough and make it the way that it needs to be made to do those high temperature pizzas, you can get a pizza out of your Kamado that's incredible that you can't get anywhere else. We're talking, I like to be in the 7 to 750 degree range for a lot of that stuff. I don't run much hotter than that in my Kamado. And if you want to go to the true Neapolitan range at 900 degrees Fahrenheit, I recommend something other than a Kamado for that. But that's beside the point. But Jeff's right. The infrared thermometer is a little thermometer that looks like a pistol or a gun with a trigger on it. You point it at the surface and a little laser light will come on to show you where you're pointing, and it'll give you a temperature reading of that surface through infrared. And it's good to know because, like Jeff said, that pizza stone, you need to know how hot it is. If your pizza needs to cook at 450, you don't want that stone temp anywhere above that. And that's where part of your learning curve comes in, to learn how to keep that from getting there. Is that the last item on your list?
No, I think I had one more item. Yeah, one more. Rotisserie.
A rotisserie?
Yeah.
Okay. So a lot of grills have rotisserie options. There's quite a few out there that do. We know all the Kamados do now. A lot of your higher end gas grills have rotisserie options. Your Masterbuilt Gravities have a rotisserie option.
Weber's do.
Yeah, there's a cult following for rotisserie cooking, and I've done a bit of it, but it's one of those things that for me it hasn't caught on yet. But I understand its draw, and Jeff likes doing rotisserie. A lot of my friends like doing rotisserie.
Rotisserie is old school, John. I mean, I watched my grandfather when I was 6 years old doing rotisserie chicken on the old Kenmore barbecue with the vermiculite and the drip pan and all that good stuff. And I mean, his chicken came out great. I mean,
right. I think chicken is one of the things that does very well on a rotisserie. Pork loin does really well on a rotisserie as well. And also, like the one you did today, that rack of pork from Costco with the French bones, those do extremely well. I've done several of those on the rotisserie. Duck does well on the rotisserie. Lots of folks like to do prime rib on the rotisserie. Rotisseries also have accessories that you can buy that are baskets that hold things. And I can't count the number of people I know that like to put chicken wings in those baskets. And that's not Jeff. And Jeff, that's not our jam, but you know how many people live for that.
I do. Hey, that's great. You know, if it's what they like, go for it.
And it's always about what you like.
I'd rather do my wings on my pellet grill.
Yeah. So it's definitely got to be about what you like. So that brings me down to the last item on my list as we're winding down the hour here. The last item on my list is what I would call a dedicated cooler for grilling. And it can be used while you're not grilling. It can be used for other things, but the Coleman makes a rectangular, I think it's a 30 or 36 quart cooler that's relatively inexpensive. They're like less than $30. And for barbecue, you know, Jeff, how when we cook pork butts and briskets and whatnot, we like to rest that meat in a cooler after it comes off. I know you don't, but you're using the moving blanket or whatever.
Tell you what, that's moving blanket is great.
Yep. Yeah.
$15.
But I like the cooler because I can use it for other things when I'm not using it for resting meat, which is most of the time. That thing's sitting idle unless I've just cooked a pork butt or a brisket usually. But I can also use it for road tripping or whatever else to put ice in, or a lot of times when Tanya and I go doing real grocery shopping, we have to go an hour away. So I'm going to throw a cooler in the back of my car. And I don't recommend spending Yeti money for a barbecue resting cooler.
Why don't you explain why that is, John? I think you have a story behind that.
Well, the first Yeti that I ever bought was the Yeti that was actually the first one that came out. It was the Yeti Roadie. They called it the Roadie, I believe, the 20-quart Yeti cooler with the metal handle. That was the one. I can't remember if it was called a Roadie. I don't remember what model it was, but I used that for resting pork butts for a long time, and I've ruined that cooler because when you put a pork butt in there hot and close that cooler up, and as that pork butt cools, it creates a vacuum inside the cooler because that cooler is airtight, and mine has sucked the plastic away from the insulation inside. It's bowed in every direction from doing that so many times. It took me a while to figure out what was going on, but by the time I figured out what was going on, it was too late to do anything about it. But the fix for that is to keep it from doing that. You unscrew the drain spout a little bit where it's not airtight, where it can breathe a little bit while it's cooling down, and it won't do that. But I pretty much ruined that. I've still got the cooler. I still can use it, but I'm not going to.
The best cooler that I use for my single pork butt is the 6-pack cooler.
Yeah.
That holds you got 6 bottles of water. That thing fits the pork butt in there perfect. Towel on top, shut the lid, boom. And there's like $15.
Yeah, an inexpensive cooler is nice to have, or an expensive cooler, just whatever kind of cooler you feel is the right thing to have. But for a brisket, pork butts, and a lot of times, I've had several situations where I've cooked a lot of meat at one time, and it's nice to have a bigger cooler. And it's like most recently, that last time, Jeff, that I cooked 9 pork butts. I took one of my larger coolers out and put all 9 pork butts in there and closed it up. And I did use one of my bigger Yetis for that, and I opened up the drain valve where it wouldn't distort the inside of my cooler.
Yeah, because that's a lot of heat in there, 9 pork butts.
Yeah, I have occasions periodically where I cook 7 to 10 pork butts at one time, and having one cooler to put all that in. It's like when Tanya and I got married, I catered my own wedding, and I cooked 7 pork butts for that, and having one cooler big enough for me to handle all that was nice. And I know most people aren't going to cook that much at one time, which is why you don't need a huge cooler, and there's no need to buy an expensive cooler for that purpose. If you want to buy an expensive cooler for other purposes and then use it for that, it's okay. But
I wouldn't buy an expensive cooler just for that purpose.
Yeah, you don't need it. You don't need it to hold that meat for longer than 4 to 6 hours in most cases, and I think 7 or 8 hours is the longest I've ever gone, but I wouldn't go longer than that, even in a Yeti.
Well, I'll tell you what, that moving blanket, I put it on the counter.
Yeah.
Put stuff in it, cover it up. 4 hours later, that thing is toasty.
The only reason I couldn't get on board with the moving blanket concepts, because for me, that would be a one-trick pony. I don't have another use for the moving blanket that I can come up with. I'm sure there probably is something that could be done with it, but I do try to avoid one-trick ponies wherever possible. I'm an Alton Brown fan.
I got some for free, so
yeah. If it's free, then it doesn't matter that it's a one-trick pony. That's
even
you
one,
better.
John.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to be hooking up in June, so maybe we can play with that. And I don't have Tanya here tonight to keep up with the questions that I've missed, but I do see the last one that's on there is, what are we sipping on tonight? And I'm having an Eagle Rare tonight. I'm not sure what Jeff's not drinking tonight because Jeff has been under the weather and he's on some medications, but tonight it's been a little bit of Eagle Rare for me. And with that, I think we're going to wrap up. We're right at the hour mark, and I think we've covered a lot of good material here on the accessories that I feel are important in my work. And I hope maybe between the stuff that Jeff and I have talked about here, we've given you some ideas. If you don't have some of these things, at least be thinking about them. And if you would like to have any specific recommendations on specific items, connect with me on the Man Cave Meals Facebook page. And
remember, Father's Day is right around the corner.
Yeah. So, if you're looking for something to put on that Father's Day wish list, I can help. I can help you.
I can help break your bank account.
Yeah. Wives don't like me too much. That's a fact. So, but I haven't spent any money on the grilling, and I haven't bought anything. I can't remember the last thing I bought new that was specific for grilling. I'm actually trying to get rid of a few things to make space. Jeff and I, if you remember a couple weeks back, we had Jeremiah on from Spider Grills. Jeff and I are going to be getting Spider Grills, the Huntsman that we had on here about 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago. Jeff and I are going to get one of those, and we'll talk about that some more probably when the time comes also. So we're looking forward to playing with that grill. That thing looked like a beast, and I know Jeff and I are going to run it through its paces as quickly as possible. So we're looking at sometime towards the end of June that we'll be bringing those onto the decks. So, all right. Guys, I appreciate you hanging out with us. And let's see. We'll see you back here next week. I'm not sure what our topic will be, but we'll know by then. So everybody have a good week.
Thanks for joining in on this week.
Oops.
Thanks for joining in on this week's episode of the Man Cave Meals podcast. If you would like to see additional content that I publish each week, be sure to follow along the Man Cave Meals Facebook page and the Man Cave Meals YouTube channel. If you would like to become a sponsor of this podcast, please feel free to contact me directly through the Man Cave Meals Facebook page. Until next week, everybody enjoy your cooking.